Welcome to Wisdom Unveiled. This is episode 25, and today we're really diving deep, aren't we?
We are. We're focusing entirely on the mystical and philosophical layers in the poetry of Hafez Shirazi.
Specifically drawing from those fascinating discussions between Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani on the Maarefat program.
That's right. Just Hafez today, through their interpretations, we want to try and unpack some of his core ideas.
Okay, but first we should mention this is important. What you're hearing is based on translations of those conversations.
Yes, and with any translation, especially with deep philosophical concepts, some nuances might get a bit lost.
So apologies in advance if anything isn't perfectly conveyed. We're doing our best to capture the essence.
Our goal really is to explore Hafez's thoughts on things like inner spiritual sight, devotion beyond just the rituals, and this idea of the heart reflecting the divine.
And we're kicking things off with a specific ghazal, one many listeners actually requested. It starts, Du didam ke malaik dar meykhane zadand.
Last night I saw that the angels knocked at the tavern door. A very evocative opening.
It really is. Okay, that first verse. Last night I saw. Why night? Why not day? Seems counterintuitive for seeing something.
Well, that's precisely the point Dr. Dinani makes. It's not about physical sight being hindered. Hafez seems to be pointing towards a different kind of seeing.
An inner seeing.
Exactly, a spiritual vision. They call it a Ru'yat-e Bateni or Ru'yat-e Shuhudiyya. It's intuitive, a kind of witnessing.
Okay.
Even a Ru'yat-e Bateni, a sort of timeless seeing beyond ordinary space and time.
So right away he's shifting our focus inwards. Not the physical eyes, but the heart's eye.
Precisely. It's about inner consciousness, which is, well, pretty radical for understanding truth.
Okay, and then malak, angels. He uses the Arabic plural. What's the significance there, according to Dinani and Larijani?
They really emphasize the philosophical view in Islam that angels are ruhani spiritual beings.
Physical.
Not physical in our sense. So you can only really perceive them with that same spiritual inner eye.
Makes sense.
And it's not just one angel, it's malak, a multitude. The night isn't a barrier here. It's actually the condition, the quiet space maybe, for this inner perception.
Right, there's a spiritual encounter within this inner vision space. Now, the really striking part, dar meykhane zadand, knocking at the tavern door. This can't be a literal pub crawl for angels, surely.
No, definitely not literal. Dr. Dinani interprets may, the wine, in this mystical context as Maarefat.
Gnosis, divine knowledge.
Yes, gnosis, divine knowledge, and also mohabbat, love. Deep, profound love.
Knowledge and love.
They're seen as inseparable, really. You can't have one without the other at this level. So the angels, these spiritual beings, are seeking the specific blend of knowledge and love.
Seeking it. Where? At the tavern.
Well, the implication is that this tavern, this source of knowledge and love, is somehow connected to humanity. That's the really powerful image Hafez creates.
Wow. Okay. So angels seeking divine knowledge and love from a source related to humanity. That leads into the second verse, right? Goli Adam bisareshtand o bek pemanizadan.
They kneaded the clay of Adam and struck it into a cup.
And the timing of this kneading, it's before Adam's earthly creation.
That's the interpretation, yes. It's happening in a sort of pre-temporal realm before humanity as we know it walked the earth. The angels are involved in this preparation.
So kneading the clay of Adam, Sareshtand and Gulidam, it's like they're preparing the raw material for humanity's potential.
Exactly. And it links back to their search for Maarefat and mohabbat. Dr. Dinani brings in a hadith here.
Oh, right, the one about God kneading the clay.
Yes. Kamartu inad Adam biyadi arbabas. I kneaded the clay of Adam with my 2 hands for 40 mornings, representing God's Jamal, beauty, and Jalal, majesty or power.
But Hafez says the angels needed it. Is that a contradiction?
Not necessarily a contradiction in this view. It highlights the angel's role within God's act of creation. They're participating in preparing Adam, shaping humanity to hold that potential for knowledge and love.
So they're like divine artisans involved in the process.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Bepeimana Zadan struck it into a cup or measure. What's the cup?
The Peimana, the cup, is interpreted as human existence itself. Wujude Adami.
The vessel of humanity.
Precisely. The very knowledge and love the angels seek. It resides within this vessel, within humankind.
So the angels, they learn from humans. That feels like it turns things upside down.
It does, but it's a core mystical idea. The suggestion is that angels learn Maarefat and mohabbat from the Insan-e, the perfected human being.
The perfected human.
Yes. Dr. Dinani mentions another hadith about Gabriel and other angels learning things like Talil, there is no God but Allah, And tasbih, glory be to Allah, from the prophets, especially the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Connecting to Hafez's line, Darzi Adam Fereshte Kharid. The angels sought the lesson of Adam.
Exactly that. It highlights this unique station of humanity in the spiritual cosmos, according to this perspective.
Belief in angels is obviously important in Islam. The Quran mentions it alongside God messengers' books.
Absolutely. Man amanu amanu billahi wa rusuli wa kutubihi wa malikatihi. Belief is interconnected.
But Dr. Dinani noted something interesting about the emphasis, didn't he?
He did. He observed that in Kalam, Islamic theology, while belief in angels, iman bi malaika, is required, it sometimes seems less emphasized in discussions compared to, say, God's unity or prophethood. He kind of poses it as a question, is faith truly complete without fully integrating belief in angels?
An interesting point. And philosophically, their role is often described as intermediaries, wasiyyah.
Yes, intermediaries between the alam-e-kak, the world of dust, our material world, and the alam-e-pak, the pure divine realm, necessary links.
Even though they are seen as emanating from the perfected human.
Well, yes, in some views, they are shuna Insan-e kamil, emanations, but still function as crucial intermediaries in the structure of reality.
This brings up that tricky part. Dr. Larijani discussed God telling the angels he's making a vicegerent on earth. Ini jalun fiat khalifa.
Right. And the angel's response, or question rather, Atajalu fiaman yufsidu sidu filai wa yasfiku didima. Will you place one there who will cause corruption and shed blood?
Why did they ask that? Did they object?
Dr. Dinani's explanation focuses on the key phrase, filart on the earth.
The material location.
Exactly. The angels, being spiritual, are prior, takaddum, to the material world, but not necessarily prior to the akakwadidami, the spiritual essence or truth of humanity.
So their concern wasn't about humanity's core spiritual potential, but about what might happen when that potential gets mixed with materiality.
Well, precisely. It links to the concept of tanazul, the descent of humanity into the material world, the alami'un, the world of elements.
Which has conflict, tod, and bloodshed, kunrezi.
Things unfamiliar to purely spiritual beings. Their question reflects their understanding of the potential downsides of this material existence.
And importantly, this dialogue isn't like a legal debate, right? It's
in the Zabani Takwin, the language of creation, of being itself, not Tashri legislation. It's expressing the inherent natures and implications involved.
That makes sense. It's like Rumi wanting to get beyond words.
Arfuat uguftara bar ham zanam. I will strike word and voice and speech together.
Takebin harsebatu damzanam. So that without these three, I may breathe with you. A deeper level of communion.
Exactly. Beyond the limits of ordinary language and the physical.
This whole discussion naturally flows into the Sufi idea of the self, the man, doesn't it? The I.
It does. Dr. Dinani talks about man istam, I am not, distinguishing the mani mulak, the absolute self, which is God, from the mani momami.
Our individual contingent self. The ego, maybe?
Yes, the attached self, the ego, that limited I isn't the ultimate reality in this view.
It's amazing how interconnected these ideas are. Angels, inner sight, the self.
They really form a cohesive worldview. Dr. Dinani even mentions human speech itself as a kind of miracle, mujeza, hinting at its source beyond the physical brain, perhaps linking to kalame nafsi, inner or divine speech.
Which brings us beautifully to another huge theme in Hafez. Tajalli, divine manifestation.
Absolutely central. Tajalli is this unveiling, God, the hidden reality, revealing himself or itself to the seeker.
And Hafez uses so much imagery for this, right? Dawn breaking, sorrow lifting.
Finding the water of life in darkness, all symbols of this movement towards divine unveiling. The divine isn't distant, just hidden, waiting to be perceived.
It's an act of seeking.
Yes, it requires inner work from the seeker.
And the wine we talked about earlier, the angel seeking it, that links to Tajalli too.
Definitely. That metaphorical wine is the experience of God's Jamal, his beauty, his attributes. It leads to realizing wadat, oneness.
That intoxicating experience of divine presence.
Exactly.
Now, there are different ways to approach knowing God, aren't there? Sensory, rational.
And then the mystical way, the Erfani path. Erfan isn't just thinking about God, it's direct experience, a state of presence.
Presence.
Yes. The goal is to purify the intellect, our reason, from the ego's limitations.
Why?
So we can perceive truth directly, with the chashamer, the eye of presence, like cleaning a window to see clearly.
So Tajalli suggests God isn't just transcendent, separate, but also immanent, present within creation.
Precisely. It emphasizes who, presence, not just Joda, separation. Think of the sun and its rays. The rays aren't other than the sun. They are the sun's light manifesting.
Like turning up a dimmer switch, revealing what was always there but unseen.
A good analogy. It's unveiling the divine within our experience.
And this relates to God being infinite.
It does. If God is truly infinite, he can't have a real opposite. Tajalli isn't God showing something else, but rather revealing aspects of his own infinite being.
Hafez often mentions needing a mirror for this perception, doesn't he? An ayna.
Yes, the mirror, the aina, needed to perceive God's jamal, his beauty, is the del, the heart.
But not a physical heart, obviously.
No, it's the aine-ye wujud, the mirror of existence itself. And most perfectly, it's the heart of the Insan-e kamil.
The perfected human again. Why their heart specifically?
Because it's undergone the ultimate purification. It's polished free from gairiyat, from otherness, from seeing things as separate from God and free from zangar, the rust or tarnish of ego and attachment.
Only a perfectly clean mirror reflects accurately.
Exactly, without distortion.
And what happens when someone reaches that state of purity? How do they see?
They arrive at that state described in the Hadith Qudsi, kuntu samahu wa ba'arahu. I, God, become his hearing and his sight.
They see with the eye of God.
In a sense, yes, their individual perception merges with the divine viewpoint. They witness the radiance of the dat, the divine essence itself.
Wow. Okay, so this ability to receive the divine manifestation, this tajalli, depends on our capacity, doesn't it? This concept of istidad.
Yes, istidad. Capacity, readiness, receptivity, divine grace flows, but it's received according to the vessel's size, you could say.
Different vessels hold different amounts.
Right. And humanity, especially the perfected human, is seen as having an immense istidad, a vast capacity to receive and reflect all the divine names and attributes.
Is that related to the zakat of beauty?
Yes, that's a beautiful concept. It refers to God's inherent generosity, his nature to overflow and manifest goodness and beauty. It's like beauty's compulsory alms. It has to express itself.
But it's not passive, is it? We don't just sit back and wait for our vessel to be filled.
Absolutely not. Realizing this potential requires effort, real striving, jad. It requires patience, steadfastness or istiqomat, and purity, afa.
The Quran talks about striving towards God.
Indeed. It's an active path. Even the sweetness people find in Hafez poetry is sometimes seen as a reward for this kind of patience and seeking.
And things like himat, high aspiration, and praying at dawn, the anfazi sarkazan, those are important too.
Very important. Himmat is that focused spiritual drive, the aspiration. And the breaths or prayers of those who rise early are seen as particularly potent times for connection and receiving grace.
So it's this dynamic interplay. God's grace is always there, overflowing.
But our effort, our striving, our purification, our patience, our aspiration that prepares us expands our capacity to actually receive it.
And perhaps community support helps too.
Yes, the whole path involves divine grace, individual effort, and often the support and practices shared within a tradition or community. Even the patience needed is seen as a gift. But that focused intent, himmat, that's crucial.
This has been incredibly rich. We've really unpacked a lot just from those opening lines, thanks to Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani's insights. Inner vision, the heart mirror, purification, love, knowledge.
It really shows the depth in Hafez. His poetry keeps unfolding, layer after layer.
So for everyone listening, maybe a takeaway is to think about your own heart. Is it polished? Is it ready to reflect something deeper? What would purifying that inner mirror mean for you?
And cultivating that capacity, that istidad, for grace in your own life.
And maybe a final thought to ponder. Hafez constantly points towards inner transformation, fueled by love and knowledge, as the key, not just going through the motions.
Right. So the question becomes, what practical steps can we take day to day to cultivate that eye of presence?
Maybe it starts with simple awareness, trying to see beyond the surface.
Mindfulness, seeking the deeper reality in the ordinary. It's a lifelong journey, of course.
We definitely encourage you to go back to Hafez's poetry with some of these ideas floating in your mind.
And perhaps explore the Maarefat program itself if this resonates. There's so much more there.
His verses really do offer endless perspective.
They certainly do.
Well, thank you for joining us on Wisdom Unveiled for this deep dive into Hafez. We hope it offered some valuable insights.
A pleasure as always.
And just one last reminder, this was based on translation, so again, apologies for any nuances that might have been missed. Thank you so much for listening.